Power Book 4, Force S3E9 Recap, Tommy kills Diamond in a startling church ambush in War Requiem, significant Episode 9 spoilers for Season 3 Power Book 4, Force in the penultimate hour of Season 3, Episode 9, War Requiem, aired January 2, 2026, on Starz. Tommy Egan, Joseph Sikora, ambushes Jenard Sampson, Kris D. Lofton, in a church, but Diamond Sampson, Isaac Keys, takes fatal shots intended for his brother in a sacrificial twist that shatters CBI and leaves Jenard reeling. The betrayals from Episode 8 are expanded upon in this episode. Driven by the fact that JP was killed by Jenard, Tommy follows him to a church where Jenard is seeking comfort. Tommy approaches him brandishing a gun, but Diamond steps in front of the bullets to protect Jenard. With his final words pleading for fraternity, Diamond passes away in Jenard's embrace, saying, "We were always better together." Tommy's loneliness, his family is now enemies, is solidified by this fratricide-by-proxy, which also drives Jenard into a frenzy of retaliation. That a crucial part is played by Shanti, showstopper, page, Adrienne Walker, who assists in setting up the church by giving Tommy information about Jenard's whereabouts since she thinks it would pave the way for her ascent to power. However, after Diamond's passing, Jenard confronts Shanti, accusing her of betraying Tommy. After a furious disagreement, Shanti is brutally killed by Jenard's strangulation, leaving the CBI without a leader and Jenard completely insane. Other threads wrap up loose ends. Manuel Eduardo Ramirez, completely turns against Tommy. Claudia Flynn, Lunel, manipulates her from the shadows, and Mireya, Carmela Zumbado, delivers birth amid mayhem. White Devil plans. While Vic, Eric Kofi-Abrefa, and Stacy Marks, Monique S. Green, get closer to making arrests, Tommy and Jenard are at odds in the finale, with cartel and CBI remnants caught in the crossfire. A stinger alludes to a cosmic alliance by teasing Tariq St. Patrick's, Rainey Jr., call to Tommy.Why These Deaths Count. The Sampson dynamic is reversed by Tommy's sacrifice of Diamond, which causes Jenard to lose his moral compass and kill Shanti in retaliation for her part in the setup. It's vintage power, no clear victories, the deadly cost of allegiance. Diamond's passing is devastating due to the brotherly affinity between Lofton and Keys, while Walker's Shanti leaves as a cunning woman defeated by her own actions. Tommy's beginning is born out of endings, and the episode sets up a bloody finale. There can be a number of things that immediately spring to mind when you reflect about Diamond and Jenard's relationship. I am reminded of the scene in Power Book 4, Season 1 Episode 1 where Diamond got released from prison and Jenard was eagerly awaiting him. The brothers merely seemed like brothers to me at first. Review of Power Book 4, Force Season 3, Episode 9. Power Book 4, Force featured one of the best episodes of the season this week. The episode's emotional impact, nuanced performances, and significant plot development eventually made it successful despite its somewhat disorganized structure. The next one will be the series finale, and for the first time in a long time, it seems like the writers fully understand what makes this series resonate. Kris D. Lofton's portrayal of Jenard is the most notable. He handled the sequence with Diamond, where he tells JP what he did, with remarkable poise. Knowing that the streets were constantly listening, Jenard had to speak cautiously. The tension in the silence made the moment much more painful. Lofton's portrayal was strong enough to evoke empathy for a character who had done a great deal of harm. The closing scene between Jenard and Diamond, which provided the ideal conclusion for the program, reflected this emotional depth. Diamond's death was surprising not just because it occurred but also because of the cause. He made the unfortunate but appropriate decision to die in order to save Jenard. In retrospect, Diamond appeared to realize his destiny as soon as he learned the truth. Long before the result was obvious, his facial expressions conveyed the story. This episode demonstrated that subtle acting, not dense dialogue, is what makes the show's best moments. Tommy's incapacity to cope with grief was further explored throughout his arc. This incident demonstrated that he suppresses his grief rather than dealing with it. One of the most honest moments of the season was when Kate confronted him and encouraged him to express his feelings. Tommy still finds it difficult to talk about Ghost, demonstrating how much the grief of that loss still affects him. That internal conflict seemed genuine and unsolved thanks to Joseph Sikora's performance. The sequence between Marshall and D-Mac was another memorable moment. The Power Book 2 seemed to be lacking the intensity and realism that D-Mac delivered. Marshall demonstrated that he was never a true brother at the same time. After conversing with Jenard, a true friend would have alerted D-Mac right once, and that treachery heightened the suspense in the episode. Tommy and Miguel's partnership was not unexpected, yet their connection is nonetheless convincing. Vic's plot, meantime, is obviously on the verge of disaster. The teaser for the upcoming episode indicates that he returns and probably hooks up with Jenard to pursue Tommy, despite the first impression that he was departing the country. Given that Tommy dealt with Vic and Jenard as soon as he arrived in Chicago, that confrontation felt like a complete circle. Every indication points to Tariq's impending arrival. Even though it only occurs in the last moments, Tommy's request for a favor certainly suggests his involvement. And that's something that is frequently discussed throughout the Power franchise, with different pairs of men who are related by blood or acquaintance asserting the title as though it has inherent significance. The best illustration of that is undoubtedly Ghost and Tommy, whose bond was so strong, entwined, and special that it transcended simple friendship. I thought it was deeper than that. However, they were not blood, regardless of how near they were. And that difference is important. Because Diamond and Jenard are related by blood, they are bound together by the memories, both positive and negative, that come with being a part of the same family and knowing someone for a lifetime. We only witnessed the two's generally tumultuous relationship and how much of their perceived problems appeared to be directly related to CBI, from its founding to Diamond's incarceration to their precarious position in the larger Chicago drug trade. Their brotherhood was continually put to the test, and Jenard in particular had a great deal of animosity for his brother, which drove him to heights he probably never would have thought possible. Like many people in the world, Jenard is a narcissist at heart, but he also exhibits extreme insecurity, which was evident when his relationship with Shanti broke down. Additionally, he killed JP. You tell him a little bit about yourself, and all of a sudden you have a bullet in your skull. While Diamond is exactly as deadly as Jenard, he is more deliberate and meticulous. Instead of acting on impulse and having to spend time cleaning up, he would prefer to approach a problem with a strategy. However, when he, you guessed it, paired up with Jenard again, we witnessed some of that impulsivity come to the surface. During Power Book 4, Force Season 3 Episode 8, Shanti cautioned Diamond about Jenard's deceit. I was confident that Diamond wouldn't blindly follow Jenard's lead and discover that Jenard had been gently manipulating him. However, after Jenard told Diamond why he killed JP and why the RDs were going to be on their ass, Diamond hardly resisted before choosing to intensify all of Jenard's foolishness and collaborate with Ortega on top of it. That's when I realized it was time for Diamond to leave. Jenard's only goal was to protect himself. He killed JP, King Kilo, and that other man out of pure rage and a sense of disrespect. I'll give him credit for turning the tide in his favor to intensify his efforts to get rid of Tommy, but none of it was calculated or part of a larger scheme. But more than anything, that was just a coincidence. Flipping the RDs against Tommy was quite simple because there were no witnesses. However, I did appreciate that everyone was so wary of Jenard because he frequently exudes an air of total incompetence, especially when he's not feeling well. When he is blindly trusted, I detest it. But more than anything, that was just a coincidence. Flipping the RDs against Tommy was quite simple because there were no witnesses. However, I did appreciate that everyone was so wary of Jenard because he frequently exudes an air of total incompetence, especially when he's not feeling well. When he is blindly trusted, I detest it. Unlike Cha, they now had the support of a cartel that wanted Tommy dead thanks to Ortega. They had everything set up such that something would inevitably go wrong. However, the brothers had a number of exasperating conversations before things went awry. We witnessed Diamond's decision to choose defending Jenard over being protected by him for the entire hour. Jenard had plenty of chances to be honest with Diamond about anything. Jenard continued to lie, yet he was sincere and honest in a way that we haven't seen from Diamond this season. Diamond was determined to save Jenard, even though it cost him his life, and I really needed him to wake up and see that he couldn't. Without Raheem's intense love for Shanti, the church ambush would never have been successful, and it nearly failed because D-Mac is still such a liability. Like many people on this show, he has strong emotions, but he's not Tommy. Tommy can be driven solely by his feelings, but he still manages to succeed via sheer luck and determination. D-Mac acts impulsively and does things like murder Marshall. D-Mac would never be killed by Marshall. He actually thought their friendship could endure them being on opposing sides of a gang war, so he turned his back on him in that kitchen, but he greatly misjudged D-Mac's instability. It's not that I think he shouldn't have killed Marshall because Marshall turned out to be a good friend, but did he really need to? Marshall was not a threat as a person, but CBI might have been. The ease with which he flipped the switch is a little unsettling, but then again, he is connected to Tommy. He nearly killed himself inside the church by firing carelessly, yet it won't serve as a warning at all. It seemed like one of those classic power moments when you knew someone important was going to die but weren't quite sure who it was. In fact, I thought there would be a scenario where Miguel killed himself while assisting Tommy, or perhaps the program would go all out and have Jenard murder D-Mac in order for Tommy to burn down the entire city in the end. Unfortunately, they opted for a somewhat safer course of action by having Diamond step in front of Jenard, allowing him to die a hero or something. This season, Diamond reached a point where I was more uninterested in him than anything else, which is unfortunate considering he was once a favorite. But in the end, his intense devotion to his brother brought him to the precise spot where we will abandon him, bleeding out on the ground.